good morning, folks. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this special meeting of the board in public. I appreciate this has been short notice, so my appreciation to everyone. We are without Trustee Bondar just as we call to order. I do want to acknowledge she'll be joining us shortly here, but I don't want to prevent us from starting on our business today. To start things off, I do want to acknowledge that we're privileged to meet on the Stalo unceded traditional territory of the Chilliwack, the Platte, and the Samath, and acknowledge them as stewards of this land since time immemorial. The board also acknowledges the marginalization that many members of our community have experienced, whether as a result of race, sexual orientation and gender identity, or other personal circumstances. The board is committed to providing a working and learning environment that recognizes the inherent dignity of all persons, that is inclusive of all, and that treats everyone with respect. With that noted, folks, and thank you, I want to acknowledge and welcome Trustee Bondar. We are just calling to order and moving into our agenda. The agenda was circulated in advance. I know there were additional materials received earlier this morning. I do want to just check in, see if everyone has an agenda before them. Seeing some nodding. I'm wondering if we have a member willing to move approval of the agenda as circulated. I have it moved by Trustee Richeld. I'm looking for a seconder. Trustee Westerby, any discussion? Not seeing any, and I'm going to invite Trustee Prosy and Bondar to turn your cameras on when you can so that we can indicate your vote for the record. I will go to the question, though. All those in favor of approving the agenda? Perfect. And if I could ask Trustee Prosy, Bondar, just to vocalize if that's preferable. I'll ask again. All those in favor? I can then, any opposed?
Sorry,
I'm not.
I am in favor.
Perfect. And I'm not seeing any objections, so we can consider this approved and we can move right on. We have 3 action items that are proposed in the agenda. I'm going to invite our Secretary Treasurer to introduce the items, provide any updates, and we'll work through the process. Members, we're going slow to go fast this morning, so appreciate everyone. And I'll turn it over to you, Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you, Chair. So we really are going slow to go fast. And just to elaborate on that, I'm going to describe the transaction that's before the board this morning. And I'm going to ask that you consider a first reading of the 2 bylaws and that we come back at a future meeting, possibly tomorrow, in order to approve the remainder of the transaction. That's sort of the preferred way to do bylaws. I did prepare the decision report with the possibility that we do a resolution to approve all 3 readings at one go. But I think the best course of action at the moment, just the way the events have unfolded, is to do, a consideration today and then come back tomorrow with everything together, hopefully, and do the second and third reading. So we are here to talk about a proposed property acquisition. It's a site at 5303 Promontory Road, Chilliwack. And I'll give you a little bit of background on this, and then I'll describe the resolutions that are before you. So the rationale for looking for and being interested in the property that's mentioned is the growing enrollment in the district. We do have a school located on Promontory. It's full, and students who are in that catchment area are bused off the hill to other schools at this time. We've actually had a request into the ministry for acquiring a site in that location, or in the south part of the city, for probably about the last 10 years, and it was actually our number 1 listed item for the last 2 years. It just hasn't been approved for funding, and that's just a vestige of what the ministry approves at different points in time. They did actually approve funding for a site in that area in the 23-24 cycle, but we didn't have a suitable one available at the time. So, it's not as though we might never receive funding, but we certainly haven't for this cycle, and that's important consideration for the board, as I'll outline in a minute. The site is approximately 6.8 acres, and we have done some due diligence on the site. The regular geological, environmental studies, in addition to engaging an architect just to see if it's, you know, the appropriate amount of flat area and size for a school, and everything has proved out. There's a couple more items that we'd follow up on, you know, just as we, once we've acquired the property, but the key due diligence items have been taken care of. I'm just going to take a temporary pause here and pass the baton to my colleague, Assistant Superintendent Manuel, who's got a little bit of insight on some of the work we've done with respect to First Nations and this particular site.
Thanks, Simone. Yeah, we were asked to take a look at a couple questions, I think, that came forward. One was around whose territory is that land on? And secondly, you know, how do we go about ensuring if there's any historical significance, what is the process that we would follow for that? So to get kind of an understanding of both of those, we reached out and had 4 different conversations with 3 local chiefs. One was the chief for Scoil, the chief for Yakikoas, and the chief for Chiacton. And we also followed up with a conversation with an elder from Scoil as well. A consistent message from all 3 were that it was not defined as territory for one of the First Nations, but more as a Chilliwack tribe consultation that we would want to follow. All of them also said that we may want to consider inviting Palalt leadership into that. However, it seemed from their perspective fairly clear that this was Chilliwack territory. So that was the first part of the question. The second one was, what process would we follow to ensure any historical significance in that land? And we were guided to the Stalo Service Research and Resource Management Center with Dave Sheppy. That in all of their buildings, that is the process they follow to involve that group to give them some guidance. What there was a consideration for was that in all the builds that any of our First Nations would do, they would have kind of a groundbreaking ceremony that where that would be added into it as well. So that was one of the things that was brought forward as something, if we were to proceed, that we would enter or engage in that type of practice, and they would give us some more understanding of what that would mean. At that point, we felt like rather than reaching out to Sawali and some of the others, we felt like we had enough of clarity around understanding of territory at this point. And then we also had some guidance towards where we would go to for getting that understanding of any historical significance of that property as well.
Thanks, Assistant Superintendent Manuel. I appreciate that. All right, so now to the brass tacks of the transaction. So we entered a purchase and sale agreement with a lot of subject to conditions, including due diligence, board approval, ministry approval, in about June. And the purchase price was agreed was 9.1 million, including GST and appraisal, due diligence, legal costs. We estimate that the total transaction would probably be about $9.5 million. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, we have not received ministry approval for funding for this property, and that is how most school district property transactions are processed in the province of British Columbia. The Schools Act, however, does allow for school districts to borrow, but to do that requires ministry approval and, of course, bank approval for the funding. So we have received ministry approval. And we also received ministry approval for an amendment to our bylaw that we approved earlier this year, and you'll actually see that amended bylaw in the packet. So the way we propose that the transaction would happen is, of the 9.5 million, approximately 3.25 million, which is the total amount available currently in school site acquisition charges, would pay for part of the transaction. The rest we would have to borrow. So that would be, I anticipate we'd borrow probably around $6 million. That would mean the board would assume and bind future boards to potentially extinguish the principal if we don't get funded by the ministry for the purchase in the future. And we've been advised to keep submitting this as a request to the ministry. So that's definitely a variable. The other variable is that we would be paying interest at prime monthly on that $6 million loan. And that interest would probably be somewhere in the vicinity of $282,000 a year. So that is a potential budgetary hit, although the ministry has allowed that we could use incoming school site acquisition charges that we receive to help pay for that interest. And those charges, based on recent history, we probably expect to, assuming Chilliwack continues to develop apace, we probably expect to receive about $200,000 a year. So, all being well, the majority of the interest would in fact be covered by school site acquisition charges. So we have approval from the ministry on everything. We've got the resolutions drafted. We've got an agreement with the vendor. We have not received the final credit agreement from the bank yet. And that is why I don't recommend that the board approve the borrowing resolution or fully approve the purchase transactions today. Once we have that in hand, and I'm hoping that is tomorrow, I mean, it's imminent, basically. This has been one of these start and stop, but that's why the Chair Swanky, was suggesting that today we go slow to go fast, and that, you ask questions, we consider the motions on the table, we potentially do a first reading, but wait and come back once we've actually got the full ability to execute the transaction. So I'll leave it there. You've got the briefing note in front of you as well, no doubt. And I'm ready to answer any questions, or, of course, the board can have a discussion amongst yourselves as you consider this.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer and Assistant Superintendent. As always, members, appreciate disposing of questions. Would anyone like to start us off? Trustee Bondar, please.
Thank you. I am very much in favor of this opportunity. I have the question, I just wanted to clarify. We have received the letter from the ministry indicating their approval of our purchase. Is it possible that that letter, those words from the ministry, can then be used at a later time to make sure that they stay good on that promise? Or can you explain a little bit about what that process looks like?
Secretary Treasurer?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Trustee Bondar. So there are two parts to answering your question. The first part is the letter that we got from the ministry purely allows us, under the sections of the School Act, to go out and borrow money to fund the purchase, the acquisition of this property. That's all it does. So that's how we would use the wording. I think the second part of your question is about, ministry funding of property acquisitions, because I indicated, that's how the vast majority of transactions happen in the province. That's done through an annual process, which we have followed and which we will continue to follow, in which this property was listed as our number one preferred item. We submitted it in June. Typically, we submit it every June, and we get notified at the beginning of the province's next fiscal year. So that will be April. So, in April, what was it? In April 2023, we got approval for the 23-24 cycle, right? We didn't get it for 24-25. We didn't get it for 25-26. Who's to say? I can't say what the province's decision will be as to whether this is funded or not, but it's on the list, and we have been funded for it in the past.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And so we may have some information as early as April, but at this time, the property is available and
Correct.
It's ours at the moment. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you both. Looking to other members for questions. Please, Trustee Thronis.
Thank you. If the province were to approve funding for April, would it be for the land or would it be for the land plus the building? What is the usual course? Do they approve them together? Thank you.
In my experience, no, but I'm looking at the executive director here, or director of facilities and transportation.
Yeah, thank you. I can jump in. They would approve the land purchase. So that is our number one, is the land purchase. And then once we're successful in that, then we would start a second request for the building.
And I think our precedent for that is Stitos, right?
Correct. Yes, correct. Land purchase, and then we start our work on the building purchase.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Van Tassel. Trustee Westerby, please.
Thank you. Chair, I'm wondering if you could either yourself speak to it or if staff could speak to, again, just in the nature of going slow to go fast, how this property came about, and that, how in the past we were seeking property but couldn't find it, how this property came to us now, and why the need for a loan now rather than kind of waiting for the natural cycle.
Thank you, Trustee Westerby, and I'll invite staff to address that. Secretary Treasurer, please start us off, but refer it to other members as needed.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I will start us off, and Director Van Tassel, you've been around longer than I have and can give the longer tale on the history. So my understanding, and I looked back at our submissions to the province, is that we've been looking for a property in this area for over 10 years. It's been an area of growth. I think everybody resident in Chilliwack knows the growth that's been happening on the mountain. And a lot of the basement suites have also been filled with children who then attend our schools. And of course, just down the mountain is now actually turning into its very own development area. So the property, that's sort of the history of us looking for a property. We've been looking for a long time. We haven't found anything. We did engage a real estate agent probably maybe 5 years ago at this point, and they actually have been very helpful in going out and talking with owners of properties. Nothing came up. Nothing has come up. This has just been something we keep putting out. Can we get funding for it? We get funding. We couldn't find a property. We can't find a property. So earlier this year, and I think I made note of that in the briefing note, the vendors actually approached the district, and we always check into these things, and it turned out to be something that was very promising, and we just kept looking hard at it, and obviously it panned out this far. The timing is, I think the other part of the question you're asking is the timing. It's just not something that we can predict. Hence, the ministry cycles haven't overlapped perfectly, and hence the need to borrow if you want to pursue it. Director Van Tassel, is there anything you wanted to add?
Oh, thank you. I would agree that there's been a lot of effort. This has been our priority one for the last 10 years, and a lot of collaboration and effort contacting homeowners in the area and planting those seeds which in this case has paid off. So I'm sure there was a door knock or message left for the owners at one time as we were going through canvassing the area for property, and it did pay off. So we appreciate them contacting us with this opportunity.
Apologies. Thank you both. And Trustee Richel, please.
My question was basically answered. I was going to ask for the Secretary Treasurer or the Facilities Manager to speak to how hard it is to find property on Promontory, but I think they just articulated how long we've been looking and how these properties don't come up very often. So thank you.
Thank you both. Trustee Westerby, I note your hand. I don't know where mine went, but it was raised, so I'm just gonna check in with other members with questions. I'm just, as was mentioned, there's a purchase and sale agreement that is nearly 6 months old now, and so I'm just thinking about the many conversations we've had, and then what is actually present in this now public venue. 6.8 acres. Can staff speak to what school would be appropriate for a piece of land that size? I also am just thinking about ministry funding will fund capacity that is in place, not future capacity. So I guess I'm wondering, what is the school that would be envisioned on this site? And in this imaginary universe where schools are immediately present, would it be full if we were able to open those doors tomorrow?
I can
Yeah.
start. All right. So I'll start and then, yeah. So thinking about the visioning for the site. So yes, we did do our due diligence. As mentioned, we brought in an architect, and as we're always trying to save costs, what we did is we took the elementary school. So a site of 6.8 acres does land in an elementary school, which actually is very is good for this area. We're hoping to bus less of the younger students off of that area. Obviously, we don't have a middle or high, but it's preferred to have schools close for the younger students. And this site is in that size for an elementary size school. So what we did is we took the 500 student with daycare site that's being built on the Rosedale property. So we use that and place that on the property because we have all of the documentation, all of the drawings necessary. So it's very simple to do that. And that school fit very well on that property. It also allowed us to have a full-size field for an elementary school, playground space, parking and drop off. And we were very excited to see we could allow for a separate bus loop. We find when we can separate bus loop and public pickup drop off, it becomes a much nicer site for people moving in and off the site. So that was the process. So definitely it would not be large enough for a middle or high school. It is elementary size and it works very well for an elementary school. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Van Tassel. If I could just invite another member to, because this capacity we currently need in Promontory, or is this anticipating future capacity?
I could actually add something to it. So based on our analysis and our Barragher software, there's approximately right now currently 850 students, kindergarten to grade 5, living on the hilltop. Some of those students are at other schools in our school district. Basically, some of those students mainly have been bused to Stitas Elementary Middle School because of capacity challenges. So realistically, if you look at the existing structure we have and the functional capacity, we would need another school to be able to sustain growth over the next 15 years in the Chilliwack School District.
Thank you both, Superintendent and Director Van Tassel. I'm just going to check in Trustee Prosy, Trustee Reed. Any questions
All good,
before I turn
bud.
it?
All good.
Appreciate it, Trustee Prosy. Trustee Reed, anything before I go back to Trustee Westerby and then Trustee Thronis? Perfect. You're good, Trustee Westerby? Thank you, Trustee Thronis, please.
I'm just wondering, and by the way, I just want everyone to know that we have peppered the Secretary Treasurer with many questions over several hours, and so we've really discussed this in depth. How much money would we save by not busing kids off the hill on an annual basis? Do we have any estimate of that?
Secretary Treasurer,
Yeah, I
care
was
to
I
refer
was doing
that?
a pregnant pause to see if Director Van Tassel wanted to jump in. I believe it's currently just shy of $500,000. I'm looking for a head nod on this one. Yeah, that's a year. And that's what I should say is that's operating costs. So of course, you've got the capital cost of the buses built in as well, but boy, that's not included.
Thank you. Members, this is an important decision. As is noted in the briefing notes, there's an inherent risk to this course of action, one that the board is grappling with actively. And there's nothing predetermined in this matter. There's no need to rush through this, but I also am happy to invite first reading of both of the bylaws, should members feel that we're at that point in our discussion.
I'd be prepared to make the motion, Chair.
Certainly. So just before I invite the motion, I am just going to remind members, so for board bylaws, and we don't need to, I think, be absolutely strict with this, but just for everyone's awareness, first reading is discussion to the principle of the bylaw. Second reading is outlined as debate and or amendment, and third reading is consideration and final decision. And I just raised this for the awareness of the board. If there are differences, if there's something to be discussed further, and it's maybe contingent on the information we're expecting to receive at tomorrow's meeting, we can dispense a first reading and then have a more fulsome discussion, debate, and discussion tomorrow. So I'll leave that with members to consider. And with that said, Trustee Westerby, if you'd like to move first reading of the capital bylaw.
Sure. I move that the board approve first reading of capital project bylaw number 2025/26, CPSD 33-03, and as written.
Thank you. I have that moved by Trustee Westerby, seconded by Trustee Bondar. Do we have any discussion? I'm not seeing any, just double checking with the mover. Okay,
I would just say that I think perhaps today would be a good day to have the discussion and not wait till tomorrow, since we're all here. But yeah, I'll just leave it at that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless I see anything further, I'm going to call the question. So this would be first reading, that the board approve first reading of capital project bylaw number 2025-26, CPSD 33-03 as attached. All those in favor, please indicate.
I'm in favor. I'm in favor.
Thank you. And Secretary Treasurer, we can note that first reading has been approved. Just if I can call it intuiting, the comment of Trustee Westerby, I'm just going to check the Secretary Treasurer. Is there any reservation with regards to process about the board engaging in second reading of changing the capital bylaw?
Sorry, technical glitches there. I think it's probably just cleaner to do one for both of them today.
Okay, I'm satisfied with that as the advice. I want to acknowledge it's the privilege of the member if they want to move that. And so we can engage in that, but I think that that's sound advice. We'll have all the information on the table tomorrow. Is everyone comfortable with that? Not seeing anyone jumping up and down. So the next item is the financing resolution. Now, this is part of our approved agenda. Again, just process. Can I consider it consensus that we're going to defer this to the next special meeting of the board? Seeing no objection, we're going to consider that consensus as we don't have all the information before us, and move on to the third item, which is the board bylaw for acquisition. Again, we're looking for first reading unless there are any questions arising. Not seeing any, I'll invite a member to move first reading. I'll go to Trustee Reichelt.
Sorry, I could not. My mute button wouldn't show up. I move that the board approves first reading of 5303 Promontory Road, Chilliwack Site Acquisition Bylaw 2025 as attached.
Thank you. I'm looking for a seconder. I have it seconded by Trustee Reed. The motion's in order, so I'm just going to invite the mover and then open it up for discussion.
So did you say the first reading is principles of the motion?
First reading is principles of the motion.
Yeah.
I think, where I'm cautious and mindful of the privilege of members. I know we will have members that may not be able to attend tomorrow. And so it's important that we create the space for them to be heard on this matter.
Okay, so in principle, I think that this is important. I think that I know that it's very highly unusual for the district to borrow money. I think that this is a site that is very necessary in the district. I think to lose this opportunity would be a very bad idea for the board. So I think we can go into the details of more in depth tomorrow, but I think that putting this on the table and getting this ball rolling today is really important. So thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Richelt. Just checking with members. Trustee Westerby.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Trustee Richelt. I agree with my colleague. Just wanted the opportunity to also say, like, we see the incredible growth that's been happening in Chilliwack, and this area is no different. We've got a projection to build many, many more, and we have to compete with developers for sites. So if we don't act now, I worry for the future. So I just wanted to leave it there. I don't know if I'll be present tomorrow, so thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Westerby. I'm just checking in one final time with members. Not seeing any further comment, I'd like to go to the question that the board approve first reading of 5303 Promontory Road, Chilliwack Site Acquisition Bylaw 2025 as attached. All those in favor, please indicate.
In favor. In favor.
Thank you, Trustee Prosy. And Secretary Treasurer, we can confirm first reading as approved. Acknowledging the advice of the Secretary Treasurer, I will discourage second reading, though again, I just want to acknowledge it is the privilege of a member if they want to move it. Not seeing anyone jumping up and down. I'm going to suggest we've reached the close of our business. I want to appreciate everyone's patience and just do a couple items of housekeeping before we adjourn here. There'll be more to say on this tomorrow, but first I just want to appreciate the work of staff working behind the scenes. As was noted, it's been almost 6 months of due diligence behind the scenes on a purchase and sale agreement that was entered in June. And as was noted by the Secretary Treasurer, there is still information actively coming forward, and so that work continues before we presumably convene tomorrow. The second piece I want to acknowledge is that the matter is pending now before the board. If there are members of the public, if there are parties within the school community that wish to provide input on the matter, please direct it to board@sd33.bc.ca. I can ensure receipt by all members of the board. While we can address matters related to process, I do want to acknowledge that while the matter is pending, there won't be any correspondence from the board as to the merits or specific matters that may influence or predetermine the matter. Just as a final piece, I want to thank members. This matter is actively being considered. It's not predetermined, and so we'll see what final direction the board provides either tomorrow or, as mentioned by the Secretary Treasurer, if it does have to be earlier next week, though I understand it would be our preference to resolve this sooner rather than later. I'm just going to check in with the Secretary Treasurer. Is there anything else that you wanted to highlight for the board? Not seeing anything. I want to thank everyone for your time this morning. I want to thank those that are present or tuning in after the fact. And we will reconvene soon, folks. We had a special meeting called for 10:30 a.m. It will occur later on tomorrow or at a later date, as mentioned. We're at 11:07 and we stand adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Richard.
Everyone's gone.